Welcome to a new episode of the EADV Podcast. In today's episode, Dr. Tiago Matos speaks with Professor Myrto Trakatelli about the health risks associated with sunbed use and the advocacy efforts behind raising awareness and influencing EU policy. Recorded just days after a high-impact event at the European Parliament, they share behind-the-scenes insights, key takeaways, and the broader mission of the EADV Advocacy Task Force. But before we get into it,
we are excited to announce you can now register for this year's Congress hosted in Paris and online from the 17th to the 20th of September 2025. The EADV Congress is one of Europe's largest international meetings dedicated to dermatology and venereology. Over 4 packed days, you'll explore a comprehensive program covering the full spectrum of specialties. Join delegates from around the globe to exchange knowledge, connect with like-minded professionals, and advance your career. Visit eadv.org/congress to learn more, and see you in Paris.
this is a must-listen for dermatologists, public health professionals, and anyone interested in how advocacy can create real-world impact. One policy, one life at a time.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the EADV Podcast. And yes, I am a new voice to all of you. My name is Tiago Matos. I'm a dermatologist and immunologist based in Amsterdam in the Netherlands, and a member of the Advocacy Task Force of the EADV. And I'm delighted to be joined today by really a friend, a mentor, an idol of mine, Professor Myrto Trakatelli, a professor of dermatology at Thessaloniki in Greece, a board member of the EADV, and also the chair of our advocacy committee. Welcome, Myrto.
Hi, Tiago. Thank you. I think that I'm blushing here, and I hope I can be to the level of what you presented me. But if I may say, because you're part of the advocacy task force, you are a rising star, and we're very lucky to have you.
Thank you. Very, very kind. So we were talking about the advocacy task force. Can maybe we start by explaining a little bit? Can you tell us what is the advocacy task force and what do we do?
Sure. So advocacy task force was born by a fusion of a working group on advocacy that we had in EADV and the patient support task force. And so I am chairing it, as you said, currently, and my co-chairs are Bibi Van Monfrance and Aleksandra Lesiak, who were previously from the patients task force. So the part of the advocacy, let's say the pure advocacy of this task force, I can tell you what are the objectives. Our objectives are to profile the role of the dermatovenerology profession in the prevention, detection, treatment, and care of skin and venereal diseases. It is to raise awareness of the burden of skin disease and venereal disease on citizens, economies, and societies. It's to advocate for European policies to support the prevention, early detection, treatment, and care of skin and venereal disease for all the European citizens, and also to advocate for increased funding to have better dermatovenerology research. And if I may, the latest example of the event we had in the EP, in the European Parliament this past week, on health risks associated to sunbeds, we were there to educate and motivate members of the Parliament to support and have more comprehensive regulations for the use of sunbeds.
So exactly, and as you just mentioned, this recording is being done just a few days after the event, which happened on May 14. And during this episode, we will try to reflect a little bit on how the event went in the European Parliament, what was its importance, the impact. And for clarity, because we're going to talk a lot about sunbeds and the health risks associated to sunbeds. Whenever we use the term sunbeds, is the same as tanning beds, indoor tanning, artificial use of UV light, and they will all be referring, at least within this episode, to the same being sunbeds. For those who haven't been in an event, Myrto, can you maybe set up the stage for our listeners and explain how does an event look like? What is such an event in the European Parliament?
Sure. So, and I may add to your comprehensive list of sunbeds the word solarium. That is also something that people use often, so it might slip out of my mouth. That's why I wanted to add it. So, these events usually happen. Organizations are invited by MEPs. In this case, it was MEP Romana Jerković from Croatia that invited us because she's a fervent support of the cause and she's working in the Committee of Health, the SAND Committee. So these events happen in rooms in the European Parliament. In this case, we had a room with a big oval table with around 50 people sitting around it, facing each other and discussing and sharing opinions. Usually they are attended by people who work in the Parliament, so MEPs and assistants, but also other people who work in the Parliament and occasionally in the Commission. In our event, we did not, unfortunately, have a representative of the Commission, which is a pity because we would really like to hear why they stopped looking into the matter of sunbeds. And so we had patient associations that usually attend such events and other key opinion leaders according to the subject. In our case, it was health. So we had also, and it was cancer. So we had also people from the European Cancer Organization attending. And also, of course, patient organizations. I can cite Global Skin that were present and EFA that was present. And I have to mention that in the task force, we do have patient organizations that participate as members of our task force.
So we can also maybe hear a short clip of our president, the EADV, Branka Marinović, on why it is so important for the EADV to advocate for stricter regulations for sunbeds. Let's hear the short clip video.
So EADV is a leading community of dermatologists, not only in Europe, but also a little bit wider, which now has 11,200 members from 130 countries, has its main task in educating dermatologists and venerologists, but also advocating for our field of dermatology and venerology. As we know how sunbeds can be very dangerous for our skin, for health, especially when it starts in younger age, our aim today here in the Parliament is to speak up about this problem and to ask politicians and other organizations who will participate in this event, patient organizations and also organizations dealing with cancer, to support us in putting again this topic on agenda of European Parliament.
Wow, Branka said it really well, and we are very, very lucky to have our current president, Branka Marinović, actively supporting advocacy initiatives. And to be honest, this is, let's say, the brainchild of past president, Alex Strategos, that was also a speaker in this event. And we are really lucky to have people involved from the EC and supporting all the advocacy actions. And we are wishing for, let's say, concrete action points coming out of such events, such as questions from the MEPs and perhaps response from the Commission and how things will be going.
Exactly. But also what I did realize, and perhaps is also not clear to most of the people, that is in such event is really an opportunity to share knowledge with policymakers. Let's not forget that dermatology, our skin health, is often not a priority for governments or health legislators, but it was eye-opening when, for example, one of the MEPs who was present, and we interacted with several MEPs during that day, MEP Sokol from Croatia, he said, wow, what I haven't realized and I found very important to learn today is that actually more people are developing skin cancer due to indoor tanning than actually people are developing lung cancer due to smoking. So he really was seeing the importance of this action that we were doing there. And in a previous meeting, he also very bluntly asked us, why are actually the dermatologists taking care of the sexual transmitted diseases? So again, we show how broad our specialty is and how present we are for the public population. Let's not forget that 49% of Europeans suffer from skin diseases, and 20% of the general practitioner consults are somewhat skin and hair related.
Which is normal because we have a specialty that is so vast. We cover more than 3,500 diseases in our specialty, which is, I think, the number one, most probably. I don't know what other specialties are covering. And to be honest, you saw the comments of the other MEPs, MEP Meleti that said, I didn't know that sunbeds do not prepare the skin before we go to the sun. I thought they were helpful. And the same way that MEP Andrej Dostal from the Czech Republic asked us what was the difference between sunbeds that are used for medicinal purposes and difference between the sunbeds used to tan for cosmetic reasons.
And what was your answer? Because you took on answering this question for him.
Yes, I did. So I answered that sunbeds can emit up to 15 times higher UV radiation than the sun at the peak intensity in the middle of the day. And of course, the lamps and the light that is used for medicinal or cosmetic purposes are fundamentally different. For example, we use UVB narrowband to treat psoriasis and other diseases, and it acts on restoring the immune balance, reducing inflammation. It is controlled. The time is very short and it's controlled and it's according to their skin type. While the sunbeds are mostly UVA, they're highly carcinogenic, and people use them with no limits.
Yeah.
Even using boosters.
And there was also one, I think, of the highlights for me, because you had another intervention where you really used a personal example of how you have with your daughter, and bringing back to the new generation of social media, TikTok, and how such a big part of the population is being influenced by social media. Actually, a big part of the sunbed users, up to 20%, are minors under the age of 18. What was the highlight for you during maybe the event?
So for me, to be honest, there were many things, and to bring all these people together, to feel the interest from colleagues who joined from all over Europe, to have all these different health and patient organizations, and seeing the interest and understanding from the MEPs. We did have 4 MEPs present in the room. Their questions, how they were engaged. And the fact that we had in the panel Astrid Nørlund-De Heer, who is a melanoma patient and a melanoma patient advocate, who was diagnosed with very early age with a stage 4 melanoma at 36. And, that was the ultimate highlight. And perhaps we can hear an extract of this very powerful testimony.
As a student, I really enjoyed life, as many students do. And I lived in a student house with 39 girls. Seriously, that was really as good as it gets. And as a student house, we had a contract with a sunbed studio. So we could stay glowy, shiny, and tanned for all our student parties. At that time, we didn't know how dangerous sunbeds are for our health. Today I realize that probably the use of all those sunbeds in my student time caused my melanoma stage 4 cancer. I was one of the very, very, very lucky people who was in the beginning, when the immunotherapy, ipilimumab, came on the market. I was one of the first people who could try it and had a complete response after 12 weeks. And after that, I became a patient advocate for the Dutch Melanoma Foundation. And that brings me here today as a patient advocate on behalf of the Dutch Melanoma Foundation to be part of the European sunbed ban for people under 18, which was denied for now. That brought us all together today. And I truly, as a melanoma patient and as a patient advocate for all the melanoma patients in Europe, I truly cannot explain to my fellow melanoma patients why there is no ban on sunbeds for people under 18 yet. It is such a rhetorical matter.
This was really a very impactful testimonial that Astrid presented. There was tears in everyone's eyes, but also she became more than just a number. We use very often the argument that 97% of the individuals who are diagnosed with melanoma before the age of 35 are sunbed users. She was 36, so she was really one of the sunbed users who got melanoma at a very young age. So she was really the personification of these scary numbers that we often use.
Yes, numbers are numbers, but for the person who has the disease, it's not statistics, it's 100%. 100%. And this is things that we sometimes tend to forget. So I was one of the people that had tears in my eyes, I admit it.
And it's also something, it's very tangible. It feels, since the UV is classified by the World Health Organization as a carcinogenic, the same way as plutonium or tobacco, it feels very logical that at least we should protect our minors to hopefully not develop so much skin cancer in an early age. I have one thing that we didn't mention, I think is very important, is that this event was open to everyone. So it was not just to us who were organizing or those who were invited. It was really open to anyone who had an interest and would like to register, which was advertised through the social media platforms. And Myrto, we have been asked a few times before, does actually advocacy matter? Do we actually reach anything? Do we have any impact? Do you have any examples to share with us?
Well, I do. And I do think that advocacy makes an impact, even if it's tiny steps. A small step can bring, if it's small steps one after the other, can bring you to the destination. So I can share that in a previous event we have in the European Parliament, we screened the skin of people there, and we also created a lot of awareness. And I saw in my consultation in Brussels at the time, a young Italian MEP that had a melanoma, and I removed it. So actually we did even diagnose a melanoma. So one person's life changed, and it might be just one person, but it's one person's life is very important for me as a doctor.
But it was also not just one person, because when we were talking with an MEP now, they were saying, there was once an event here many years ago that they were actually doing the screenings in the skin. That was so powerful. And you said, yes, I know, this was us. So people really remembered years after how impactful it was, the event and the screening that we were doing.
I think these kind of events leave their mark, and they leave their mark in a positive way because they raise awareness on the importance of checking your skin. It's also important how we manage to participate in the European Commission call on prevention of cancer, the cancer stakeholder group. And this was part of the European Commission Europe Beating Cancer Plan. And it was really on improving prevention. However, I'm really sad because of this year, on the 4th of February, the new commission dropped the initiative on sunbeds, citing lack of evidence to suggest that further measures would add to the protection of EU citizens from health risks associated with sunbeds.
Yeah, which is just really ridiculous. And we understand that a new commission was elected, and the previous commission was supposed to release the recommendations in 2024. They were not able to. There was some delay, and the new commission, not being maybe aware of the dossier and the importance, were just defining their new priorities. And that's really why we set on writing and putting all the evidence in a summary of several articles that were published by the Journal of the EADV, and also participated in a letter that the EADV submitted. And I think those manuscripts and that letter had some impact very recently. Myrto, can you tell us a little bit about it?
Thanks to these manuscripts that actually, after the European Commission decided not to release a recommendation on Sunbed use, we shared these articles with national health representatives, including Denmark's. And that representative from Denmark shared EADV's letter and articles with colleagues in Copenhagen. And just 2 months later, so very recently, this past week, the Danish government announced a national ban of sunbed use for minors.
Well, yeah, that is really encouraging that we are having some impact. I never thought that we would be supporting Danish legislation, but definitely now the minors of Denmark are protected for sunbeds.
We are supporting the skin of all minors in all of Europe. We are the European Academy of Dermatology and Venereology, so all our citizens, and this is a lucky country. We hope that other countries will have the same future.
And not just for the EU, like we are telling you, the EADV is representative of Europe, but has members from 130 countries around the world. So we are also very active with local, national level representatives, not just from the European, the EU. We are reaching our time. I will just leave you with 2 facts more about the risks of sunbeds for our skin health. More than 400,000 cases of skin cancer in the US each year are linked to indoor tanning. From the EU, we are still missing some data. And those who are ever tanned, even if it's a single time, are 6 times more likely to be diagnosed with melanoma in their 20s than those people that never used sunbed. Myrto, I would really like to thank you for leading the task force so successfully and joining me today on the podcast.
Thank you for that. And I will spew a last statistic, which is actually not a statistic. It's a very, let's say, alarming fact that sunbeds are addictive in a way, because it's been with functional MRI, we saw that they flare in the brain the areas of reward and addiction. And we know that they produce beta endorphins that are endogenous opioids that are elevating mood. So they are quite addictive. That's why I'm concerned about the Gen Z generation. And you are part of the younger generation of EADV and of the Advocacy Task Force. So I also thank you for being there and for asking all the right questions.
Thank you. And to conclude, we will leave our listeners with an extract from an interview that our colleague from the task force, Aleksandra Lesiak, who asked the MEP Dariusz Joński from Poland if he believed that we need to have regulations for the use of sunbeds within the European Union. Thank you, everyone.
Hello.
Hello.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
My question to you from EADV side is, do you think that we need regulation for sunbeds in the European Union?
I didn't know till today what the situation is, but I think we have to take a regulation about this. So I think it's the best place to do the regulation about young people, because it's very important. So I will support you and your academy and of the people who want to protect young people, because it's a huge problem. So you can come if you want to me, and we can do together because it's a huge problem.
We would like to give a special thank you to all our listeners. If you haven't already, make sure you subscribe on Apple Podcasts, follow us on Spotify, or otherwise find us on any major podcast provider. We appreciate you joining us and look forward to presenting more interviews, research, and other topics of merit. Until the next episode, take care of your skin.